He's got the field goal! He's got the premiership!
He's the fastest man on the planet.
Oh, the Grim Reaper!
You can take me now! I have seen it all! Newcastle have won the grand final! That's not a try, that's a miracle! Sound the alarm!
Welcome to the Garden of Steeden podcast, presented by the Rugby League Bible. Welcome to our debut podcast. We've got a couple of the boys here to talk some footy and have a look at round one review, but also we'll have a look at round two coming up this weekend and see what we think. How are we, lads? First podcast, debut episode. How are we feeling?
Oh, look, great, mate. After a big weekend of footy, I can't even stress enough about how good it is to have it back on me telly. Give me something to do from Thursday through to Sunday. But no, yeah, just loving it.
Yeah, it's good to have it back. Missed it. We had our Super League and all the other stuff, but this is the real stuff back now. So
the gift that keeps on giving, they say. So we'll have a look at this round one that we all had our eyes glued to, and we're looking at these games here. Penrith Panthers defeated the Manly Sea Eagles on Thursday night. It's our first game of 2022, and we had Panthers getting up 28-6 there. So pretty interesting game there. It was good to see the Panthers boys sort of string it together without Cleary there, but also obviously they're at home, and we know how tough they are. I think a lot of people forgot that too, how hard they were to beat at home. Last year, obviously with the COVID stuff, they were away from home a little bit as well. So we might have a look at some players we thought impressed out of that game. I've highlighted two here. I thought Sean O'Sullivan, you couldn't really go past him. He obviously wore that famous number 7 jersey for Penrith, and he did run for 68 metres, which isn't too bad. 27. He had 187 kicking metres and made a couple of tackles. 385 kicking metres, sorry. No errors, 28 tackles and 1 miss. So it was pretty good in defence as well for Penrith. And then my other player I wanted to highlight was Liam Martin, who I think will be in for a pretty big year. Obviously, they lost Kurt Capewell, and there's that hole to fill there. And with Kickow moving on next year, he's sort of going to be the leader in that back row there. 114 metres, no errors, 34 tackles, just your bread and butter footy there from Liam Martin. Did you boys have some players that you thought stood out, and what do you think of the game?
Yeah, first I'll further on that point of Sean O'Sullivan. He had massive shoes to fill. Obviously, one of, if not the game's best players, absence he had to fill in for, and he was phenomenal. Like, for someone that barely got a great deal of game time while at the Warriors last year, he showed up in this Penrith outfit and just he blew me away. Honestly, I was very, very surprised. But Dylan Edwards, I thought he was unreal. Like 340, 50 metres or whatever it was is absolutely phenomenal. I think he was only 20, 30 metres short of the all-time record, which for someone like Dylan Edwards, who a lot of people don't even consider as one of the top-tier fullbacks of the game, it's an incredible achievement. Young Isaac Tago, he was fantastic. I mean, obviously they lost Matt Burton last year, who was very vital to that side down that left edge, and he proved very well. Great for my Supercoach team too. Scored me a couple cheeky points there. And Isaiah Yeo, I've been a bit touch and go with Isaiah for a few years now, but he keeps growing on me every single game, and the connection he had between his halves and his outside men, just great. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with again this year.
Yeah, for me, I'll probably just add on to that, like Isaiah Yeo and probably Api Coruscant, 2 players who didn't play that trial game against Parramatta, and Bill Edwards too. And you see the difference that those 3 just brought to that side, like a 36-0 spanking to them, then do this to a side that most people thought were going to go a long way this year as well. And they probably still will, but yeah, that was just 3 key players that you sort of realise that they missed. Like, obviously people knew they were missing, but yeah, they were 3 massive ins for Penrith.
Yeah, much more important than I think anybody realised, to be honest with you. It really did pave the way for my round of tipping there, that one. I backed the Manly boys. God, it was all downhill from there.
I had the Penrith boys there, but I think when you look in towards the season, I don't think the bells are ringing yet for Manly. They did start slow last year, and obviously they did have Turbo in this game, but they were without the likes of Josh Schuster, but also Dylan Walker, who have been, not just on field, but also off field, an important part of that Manly side. And I think you look at their key players in Turbo, he still put up 150 odd meters there, and they're packing Olakawatu, Tapau, and Sipley all ran over 100 meters. I thought Bullimore was impressive for his debut. He did get a bit of Tommy Travojevic gift there with that try he did score, but I think they are still looking good for him. I did see him clutching that shoulder, and I thought there might have been a few nervous Manly fans there, but he seems to have pulled up all sweet. So they've got a big game this round coming up against the Roosters, which will be interesting to have a look at. But yeah. So our next game we witnessed was Raiders versus Sharks. So we had the Canberra Raiders clutching a late win there, 24-19 against the Sharkies. Two players that I found were pretty good out of this game was Jack Whiten. I thought he was sort of, trying to wind the clock back there to that sort of vintage Whiten a little bit, which was a couple of years ago, obviously 148 meters. Didn't make an error, which in the past few seasons, Whiten's sort of been, prone to a couple of errors or a couple of dumb mistakes, maybe overplaying his hand a little bit, and he did score that try. And then Hudson Young obviously scored that try at the end there, which was important for him. Again, didn't make an error, and 124 meters. So I think I didn't see much of this one, but those two boys look like they're playing some good footy, and I think they've played together enough now over the last few years to be able to make some good partnerships there with the young Raiders boys that are coming through too.
Yeah, Jack Whiten indeed was back to some of that form that took the Raiders to the grand final just a few years ago. But I was really impressed with his halves partner, Brad Schneider. We saw a taste of him in the first week of the trials, I believe. Could have been the second. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he was very controlling in what he'd done, and he allowed Jack to open up and have the opportunity to run the ball, which I think we can all agree is, without a doubt, his best feature. He's such a big, strong ball runner, and he definitely caused some havoc for that Cronulla side. But while we're on the topic of Cronulla, I thought Nicho Hynes in his club debut was great. A lot of people were saying that he's coming from the Storm. He's not going to be all that under a new side. I thought he took control and was able to accumulate a bit of his running game into that as well. I thought he had a really good game, as well as Blake Brayley. I was impressed with as well.
Yeah, mine probably would be, from the Raiders, it'd be Tom Starling. Just another player who I'm starting to get more and more sold on every week. And with Josh Hodgson heading to Parramatta next year, the Raiders still have a good one. And they got another one coming off the bench this week as well. So, but yeah, Tom Starling was just impressive. He looks so quick. He's like another Damien Cook, really, just so quick out of dummy half. And the things he can do out of there are quite scary. And for the Sharks, you had Dale Finucane, who just showed again and again why he's such a wanted player in most sides. Like 45 tackles on his club debut, that's impressive. Especially just up the middle too. None missed, even better.
None missed for Dale. Wow.
Yeah.
Just a quick
45
question.
and none missed.
Just a quick question on the Sharks topic. What were your thoughts on the Matt Moylan Nicho Hynes partnership?
I think they might take a few weeks to sort of build. I think by memory Trindle was suspended and not in, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when he is back, and if he takes that 14 sort of jersey, because looking at their bench, they rolled out Tolman, Talakai, Hunt, and Fafita, so they didn't have that utility in there. So you'd think one of those big boppers will just drop out and they'll make way for a utility. I think Moylan, he's hit and miss, really, isn't he? He come and set it alight and get your 4 try assists and whatever. But I think with Nicho there and Nicho doing a lot of the kicking and stuff, it sort of frees him up a little bit, and it doesn't have to be that dominant half anymore, which in teams in the past, he sort of had to do that a little bit. Even when he was at Penrith, they weren't the Penrith we know today, so he sort of had to play that role a bit. But I think if you can take the pressure off, Moylan a little bit, he does have some class there. I think he might end up, maybe moving to that 14 role, and obviously with blokes like Connor Tracy, who did a good job on the edge, on the wing, and in the centres for him last year, you'd sort of like him in the middle a little bit. So yeah, I'm not too sure what will happen there. I think I wouldn't be surprised by mid-season if we see Trindle take that 7 and play Nico in the 6, or vice versa. I think that they're your halves going forward. Fitzy sort of looked at that more building for the future sort of setup, and as much as you're not going to just sort of show Matty the door, I think Trindle and Nico is a way forward for Cronulla.
Yeah.
Speaking on those big boppers on the bench for Cronulla, Andrew Fafita, he came on there and just brought back that old school, just niggly stuff. I think when Blake Brayley scored that try out of one of the nicest players we'll probably see for a long time, Andrew Fafita's the first one in there to give some lip, and I think he'll help that Cronulla side get back that mongrel that they had for so long.
Yep. But I think I'll be right, the Sharkies. You sort of expect them to maybe struggle putting the pieces all together at the start of the year, but they've hung in there.
They were without Craig Fitzgibbon, so I think the turning point will be this week when he's back on board.
And Canberra's a tough place to start your season. All right, our next game. This is probably one of my surprise results of the round here. We had Brisbane Broncos defeating South Sydney Rabbitohs 11-4. Obviously, the 11 comes from that cheeky field goal from Kurt Capewell, which was struck magnificently. So I've got two players here that I sort of highlighted. One was Paddy Carrigan, 190 metres, 32 tackles. Didn't miss a tackle, didn't make an error. Brisbane, that was in the last few years. They're sort of, they've error machines, or they've made a few errors or missed tackles in the middle there, but that was really disciplined from Pat. And Albert Kelly, 540 odd kicking meters, 146 running meters, one try off Cody Walker sort of intercept there. And I think us boys have spoken in the past about Walker, and when he makes that play where it leads to the opposition score, and he can sort of drop his head and you sort of play him out of the game there. So as much as it wasn't a great pass from Cody, I do think it was well done from Kelly reading that play, and obviously his kicking game was amazing. 544 kicking meters. You add Adam Reynolds into that, this week, that's going to do most of the kicking. I think Broncos might have turned a few heads after round one.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised with this one. I did think that with the absence of the departure of Reynolds, Jaden Stewart and Dane Gagai, as well as Wayne Bennett, they were going to have a bit of a hard time getting off the bat. And without Latrell Mitchell there last week, you could definitely tell that there was a few things missing, but nothing against the Broncos. All credit to them. They were brilliant. They went for the whole 80 minutes. Payne Haas, he is a freak of nature. The work that he puts in is second to none. But the man, actually, back on that Carrigan note, that was his first game back from that ACL injury last year, wasn't it? See, that's a great effort coming off the back of such a big injury. And I sort of wanted to see young Kobe Hetherington take that lock spot and potentially move Paddy into the front row, but I don't think I can agree with that any further, because Carrigan was just that impressive over the weekend. And young Selwyn Cobbo, he had a few moments in the match that really could have exploded his stat sheet. Obviously, that forward pass after he broke down the right edge there, I think it was to Albert Kelly, just travelled a few metres forward, and there were a few other things that caught up on him a little bit, but he had a phenomenal game nonetheless. But yeah, I think with Adam Reynolds back this week, they could be a real surprise factor this year, and I am so excited to see what Reynolds does for Katoni Stags, because we all know the potential that he has, and with a game general like Reynolds there, he could open up so many opportunities for Katoni, and I think it's going to be dangerous for the Doggies this weekend, I believe they line up with. So we'll see how they go.
I think like the whole back five really for the Broncos is impressive. Like to lose someone like Tessie New coming like a few weeks out, but have people like Jermaine Asako sort of always seems to put his hand up. He's not a world beater. Corey Oates gets back on the try scoring books after a pretty dry little stint. A few 145 meters from out the back as well, and yeah, just good effort. Selwyn Cobbo had 72 meters from kick returns. Like that's insane. And then the other one, probably just Jordan Ricky. Like I think he had a rather impressive. Not so much his running, but his defense. I think he was at like 30 tackles and like at a 93.75%. He missed one tackle. So coming up against a very strong Rabbitohs forward pack, I think it's a very tough carry. And for the Rabbitohs, you've always got Cam Murray always seems to just be throwing himself at everything that moves. And you sometimes wonder if he's all there, but yeah, just some of the efforts that they're putting in. It's just Jai Arrow is another one who, for me, I watched a lot of that game and he impressed me quite a bit. 120 meters off 11 runs and even kick return meters. So
I thought Damien Cook looked pretty sharp out of dummy half too. I think when the Bunnies get a bit more go forward, he's going to be in for a deadly year.
Yeah, and I mean they've got a few growers in that team that they do rely on a little bit of confidence and blokes like Colin Tangi and stuff that we know can turn into absolute machines, but they just need that first kick of the ball and roll the ball to sort of go their way. Just on Gagai there, it was interesting to see how much Bunny sort of missed him. It was only 11-4, but from looking over the highlights of the game and watching it, you can sort of see that every time Brisbane went down that edge, they sort of look like they want to score every play. And Dane, an experienced player, who there's obviously the old Dano in a Queensland jersey, but you look at the next game we're going to have a look at now with Roosters and Knights, and you can sort of see Dane there and showing up for Newcastle when they defeated the Roosters 20-6, which to me is the most surprising result of this game. I sort of looked at that one and went, well, that's tough start for Newcastle. Roosters are my tip to sort of take it out, and it is only round one. I think they'll still pull a few things together, but Dane was one of the players I wanted to highlight out of that game. One try, a try assist, 200 metres and didn't make an error. And then the other one was Big Tyson Frizzell, 147 metres, 37 tackles, didn't miss a tackle and didn't make an error either. In the pack there for Newcastle is really proving why we paid so much for him as they did.
Yeah, Dane, he really did run amok on Saturday afternoon, didn't he? It was back at his representative best. It makes me wonder whether he's got a vendetta against some of the New South Wales boys like James Tedesco and Angus Crichton, for example, because he was unreal. Like everywhere the ball was, Dane Gagai was sniffing around and he wanted every single bit of it. I thought Jake Clifford was one who really impressed me. He gave 110% from kickoff till the final whistle, and he was someone I was a bit wary about Newcastle signing, especially after Mitchell Pearce headed off to France. But him and Clune actually gelled pretty well. Adam Clune's another one that I think will give you 110% every single game. And young Chris Randall filling in for obviously the injured Jaden Brayley. Excuse me, I get them two mixed up quite often. I thought he was really good. He went for 40-odd tackles or 50 tackles or something and didn't miss one. So I'd say there's a bright future in that number 9 jersey for Newcastle, regardless of which path they take.
Yeah, I think, mostly Chris Randall impressed for me. Dom Young is another one who sort of looks like he might finally get a crack at this side. Like Bradman Best is a freak. And probably big Dave Clemmer for me was he hasn't started for a while, and when Daniel Saifedi's back, he probably won't start again. But he's definitely pushing his case to stay as a starter. And Mitch Barnett too, he just always seems to have a crack. But for the Roosters, you've got the same two. Like, it's the same two seems to be all the time, and it's James Tedesco and Joey Manu. Like, if those two didn't play, I think the score would be so much worse. Like, but apart from that, like, there's not many Roosters who overly impressed. Like, Lindsay Collins was all right for his first game back, or first competitive game back, but sort of the rest of them are quite disappointing. And it's like Jared Rugby-Hargrove to me was a disappointing sort of game for him, and I'm hoping for his and Roosters' sake that he can pull out a bit more this week. But
that was an interesting one. Sorry, Russ, you take it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it is a long season, so we sort of don't want to sit here and get into the chookies here, but you sort of expected it to come along a little bit better. There was a few interesting. I don't know. There was a few interesting. I'm not going to sit here and who am I to say what Robbo's doing on the field, but a few decisions where I sort of couldn't quite understand what was going on. I think Joey Manu was on the wing a little bit, and you sort of think someone who's so good in the centres, but it is a long season, and I think by around 2021, I wouldn't be surprised to see him sitting up there in that top four and really chiming in for finals.
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick mention while you were talking about Robbo's decision. Not that any of us can hold any kind of candle to his credentials, but I was a bit confused with the Jared Rea-Hargraves heading to the bench and starting young Fletcher Baker. Like, I personally didn't have Fletcher in the 17 when we were selecting our best sides last month or whenever it was, but he got the start and he wasn't bad, but I just couldn't put my finger on that one. I don't know whether he was trying to counteract something, like trying to catch Newcastle off guard when they had a few of their weaker players on or something, but
and Newcastle, they've still got DSAF to add into that pack as well too, which will be interesting in the next few rounds coming as well. All right, we'll just move through these next ones nice and quick. We got Warriors Dragons. Dragons defeated the Warriors 28-16. I just had two here. Obviously, Ravalaura scored the 3 tries, ran for a stack of meters. The other one was Jack DeBellin. I think he's had a lot of off-field stuff in the last couple of years, and I think we kind of forget how good he was for Dragons and stuff before he left, but didn't make an error and racked up 150 meters. So I think it's good for the Dragons. They're going to have a bit of a young side all year, but obviously you take out Reece Walsh from the Warriors and SJ's first game back there and a few other things there, but it was good to see the Dragons boys get a win and see how they progress in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Tyrell Sloan really is something, isn't he? I mean, I read somewhere that he didn't get any Dally M points. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did see that. There seems to have already started already with our Dally M points and a lot of head scratching in terms of players picking up different points and whatnot. It might need a bit of an overhaul system, but going forward, I think it's interesting to see how they're awarded and allocated. But he played well.
I thought he was great.
I think you got Zach Lomax is just another one of those scary players for the Dragons. Just looks like it could be anything. He's just coming up a very, very tough Blues contingent at the moment. He probably won't get a run. And Ben Hunt just shows what they've missed. What they missed at the end of last year. And Jack Bird's another one who's made a very successful move into that back row.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
I was just going to touch on that Zach Lomax comment. His flick pass is something special, and it's great to watch. We saw
he carries the torch for Dragon Centers.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Very, very Gaznia-esque.
All right, the next game was a little bit of a different one as well. We had Melbourne Storm defeating the West Tigers 26-16. So the two here that I sort of had to look at was I had Paps, so Ryan Pappenhausen, 109 meters, 2 try assists, which was sort of good to see him back and playing well as well. And then also that young back rower, Kelman Tuolagi. Obviously we've seen him help Jennings off the field there, which was nice. But I think I'll stick my hand up and say when he was named, I sort of thought, who's this bloke? But he backed up over 100 meters and didn't make an error either, which I think for a Tigers side is pretty impressive.
Yeah, he did come through the Storm system. Now, as a Storm fan, I've seen him toddling around for a while there, but as a Storm fan, I tell you what, this game was edge of the seat stuff for me to watch. I was petrified that we might be losing that prolific round one record to the Tigers, and I don't know how I would have responded to that. But Brendan Smith, fractured hand, George Jennings ACL, and Christian Welch Achilles injury, I believe. They got picked apart on the weekend, and I think it's going to be tough to work around that. But if there's anyone that can do it, it's definitely Craig Bellamy. And Jerome Hughes, he's phenomenal. Without Jerome Hughes, I can't imagine Melbourne get the win on Saturday night. He was so clutch in the second half, final 30 minutes, and scored that try that really brought him into the game. So I think it's time that
I've probably got
that contract.
Remus Smith to me is another one who just seems to gone from leaps and bounds from going from the Bulldogs and sort of struggled a bit there, but he's come to the Storm, and just like every other Storm player or anyone that ever comes to the Storm, they seem to just turn to gold. Xavier Coates got one of the nicest tries I've ever seen, and just that Storm wingers just do Storm winger stuff, I think. And yeah, Josh King was quite impressive too on and Tyron Wishart having to come in so early was quite impressive as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think Tigers were good considering. See how they sort of go. Jackson Hastings had a first, pretty good first game back in Australia too, just quietly. So we'll move on to our next game, second last one of the round. Probably one of our more entertaining ones. Plenty of points scored. We had Parramatta Eels 32 defeating Gold Coast Titans 28. So I think you sort of expected Parra to win this game, and it was pretty tight. But I think at the end of the day, they got the win, and that's all that sort of matters. Round one, you had obviously Sean Russell scoring 3 tries there, and then getting taken off injured. I wanted to highlight the two big thick boys for Parra, Junior Paulo and Reggie there, Regan Campbell-Gillard. Both ran for 170 odd meters individually, and they only made one error between them. So as a starting pack in the NRL, I don't think there'd be much scarier than them two big boys running that era or trying to tackle them. The other one was we had it was interesting that they moved Dylan Brown to the centres, and sort of upset that halves pairing. Obviously there was that injury there and whatnot, but we'll see what happens this week. But I think at the end of the day, it was good to see some points scored, and the Titans are a team that they can get in that shootout and score points, and they just need to sort of work on their defence a little bit. In terms of Parra, I think Reid Mahoney was really good for them, and they look to be sort of taken off where they were last year and make some changes as they go throughout the season.
Yeah, I think you just touched about on just about everything there. But my one key moment from that was I think it was Sean Russell's second or third try when Mitch Moses kicked it about 70 metres and hit the left upright for Dylan Brown to put it on the toe again. That was some spooky stuff to watch. I was really, really, really impressed with that try. Mitch Moses' kicking game looks like it's going to be one of Parra's biggest this year.
Yeah, interesting point for me is after the 41st minute, there wasn't another try scored. So in 41 minutes, we had 10 tries, and then the last 39 minutes, there was nothing. And it's Parramatta was probably very lucky to win it in a lot of ways. But be interesting to see how they go this week. They've that Dylan Brown moving to the centres is an absolute brain killer for me, but I don't understand why you do it. But obviously you got to fill holes, but I think it was just the wrong way to fill it.
I think the whole idea of playing Jacob Arthur on the bench was a brain killer for me. Like, I just wasn't really sure why, or I've got no answers for it. Nothing against Jacob for that matter, but just didn't seem real necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, they got the win, so they'll be happy with that. Our last game of the round, as a Dogs fan, my favourite game of the round, but I think you boys might had a bit of a snooze fest during this one. We had the Canterbury Bulldogs defeating the North Queensland Cowboys 6-4. And I've just got one player here, Matty Burton, in his club debut. So, had the 6 on his back, but ultimately played a bit of a style of a 7 there with obviously Jake Averillo playing like he did. Only ran for 80 metres, but kicked for 505 metres. And some of those kicks he put up, I think, were terrorising the Cowboys' back three there. Again, attack looks clunky for the Dogs, I think. There was a period of time towards the back end of that second half before the rain come in there where Burton was sliding both sides of the ruck and linking up with Averillo, and I think they looked much better when they did that, where it was 7-6 and the fullback. But you sort of think, like you've brought these players in now, and it'll be interesting to see how they go about some game plans and scoring some points. But they did what they had to get the win, and defensively was pretty good. As of Cows, so much strike there. They've got to find a way to be able to get them into the game. I think you've got Hammer at fullback. He needs to be chasing the ball a little bit, and obviously Val Holmes. And I was really impressed with that Jeremiah Nanai in the back row there, who was explosive all game and looked like their best threat. But we'll take the win as a Dogs fan, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this game. As you said, it wasn't the most entertaining of the week, and probably won't be the most entertaining of the year, that's for sure. But I will touch on a few things. As you said, Jeremiah Nanai, I've been a big believer that the Cowboys should be looking at him and Lukey and Nanai to be their back row pairing for the next 5-10 years, however long it takes. Nanai was brilliant. Lukey a bit quiet, but he come off the bench in place of Tom Gilbert in a rather strange shuffle before kickoff. The Jason Taumalolo project, I don't know what's going on up there, but something has to be done. We're not seeing the Jason Taumalolo that we were seeing 2, 3, 4 years ago. It was just a human wrecking ball through every side's defensive team. And on the Dogs note, I was quite surprised with Jack Hetherington. He was involved in a lot, causing a lot of grief for the defence. Cowboys had to have about 4 blokes trying to block the offload, get him to the ground. It's just him and Tavita Pengai, which I think he should be back this week. They're going to be a very solid back row pairing, as much as it pains me to say.
Yeah, I think the Bulldogs actually front row was quite impressive. Like, forget Paul Vaughan's barbecue event, but him and Luke Thompson, between the two of those, are quite impressive. There's word that Luke Thompson wants out of the Bulldogs, but if I'm the Bulldogs, I'm asking him to stay because I think he just adds so much to that side. Probably at the end of that game was more suited to his natural weather, just that slow, wet track. And all but Braden Burns in that back 5 all cracked 100 metres as well. So that's not very common, especially for like Brent Naden in the centres. Not many times they break 133 or 100 metres. So very impressive back 5. I think they just need to maybe get someone in to help Matt Burton, and I think they actually could be onto something there. And Jeremy Marshall-King wasn't too bad for considering.
Yeah, he found his running game a little bit. I still think that Bailey Biondioto off the bench there maybe needs some extra time, and like you said, someone to sort of help Burton out. And I think discipline, as it was last year, will be a big key factor for the Dogs this year as well. I think there was a kick there that Burton put up in the air that went outside the stadium, and there was a couple of them where he put up massive bombs, and the Dogs players sort of chased, but then they were offside, so they just undid all the work again. But going forward, I guess that'll be the game plan for them, is to stop giving away so many penalties and whatnot. But they'll get the win there. And we'll move on to our preview a little bit. So we have spent some time on the review, but that's all right. We're sort of working into it a little bit. We've got our round 2 preview now. So we've got a Thursday night game, which will be an absolute belter. It's the Storm versus the Bunnies at Amy Park, so back down there in Melbourne, 8 o'clock, obviously. My key matchup for this one is obviously Ryan Pappenhausen, but the return of Latrell as well. So they'll both wear that number 1 jersey and look to sort of go at each other all game. Both different styles of footy, I think, a little bit as well. Paps is obviously very creative, and you've got that powerful explosiveness of Latrell that the Bunnies desperately need back as well. And I want to just highlight the bench and a little bit of a matchup here as well. I mean, I know you can never underestimate Belly's men and who he brings in. You've got Wishart, Alec McDonald, Trent Liero, and Tepai Maroa, which is a pretty inexperienced bench when you think about it, and they're sort of going to come up against Jacob Host, Burgess, Havili, and Cheekham, which has a bit more experience. Be interesting to see how that plays out, but I can't go past the Storm winning. I think they'll get the win, and I think it might be a slow start for the Bunnies. And then in terms of the team list, it was interesting to see that Mansour and Liam Knight weren't playing this week. I'm not sure if there's injuries in knees or whatnot, but I guess Johnson moves back to the wing, and that pushes a source out. But in terms of Liam Knight, I'm not sure what the go is there, and Meaney was unlucky not to get that 14 spot, but I guess Belly likes what he sees in Wishart.
Yeah, 100%. This is easily the game I'm most excited for this week. Latrell Mitchell is going to be absolutely roaring to get out on the field, and honestly, I think it's a bit concerning, because if there's anyone that can just come out and shock the Storm team, it's definitely someone like Latrell Mitchell. But for me, I'm most excited to see Cameron Munster. It'll be his first game for the year. Obviously, he had that little off-field dilemma post-season last year, and zero alcohol in his diet at the moment. And as Bellyache said after one of the trials, he reckons he's matured about 10 years in a handful of months, and I think we're in for a big year for money. I've got him as a bit of a Dally M favourite, but we'll see how that one pans out. But yeah, obviously they get back Jesse Bromwich from COVID protocols and Harry Grant from suspension as well. So despite losing a couple of key figures last year, they still look as strong as ever, and I think this game might come right down to the wire.
Yeah, I don't think I can go past any of those matchups. Like Harry Grant and Damien Cook for me is a big one. I think also like Harry Grant will just be keen to rip in, and he's a very different hooker to Damien Cook in a lot of ways. Like they run, but Harry Grant's just got something different about him. And I think as a combination, those two halves, it's just going to be so different. Like Jerome Hughes is going to light up and open up so much for Cameron Munster, and Cameron Munster doesn't have to worry about organising anything. Whereas with the other opposite, it's going to be a bit tough for Cody Walker and Lachlan Ilias to come up against those two together. Like they were up against two rookie half, an experienced half now with Kelly and Billy Walters, who sort of floated around reserve grade for the past sort of 4 years. These two, I think it's just going to be sort of a masterclass. And with the sort of outside backs that the Storm have, I can't see it. Bray said it'd be close, but I can't see it. I think it might be an absolute towel up.
Yep. Move on to our next game. We've got the Penrith Panthers to take on St. George Illawarra Dragons at Cogra, Friday 6 o'clock. So bit of the different time slot here at the 6 o'clock. I don't mind it personally. Get home from the end of the work week and put a bit of footy on. And my matchup for this game is Jerome Luai and Talatai Amon, two of the most young, entertaining halves in the comp, and they're sort of good to watch. I think Amon sort of might take a bit of time to get into his work a little bit there at the Dragons and to really shine and show how he is. But again, like you said before, Ben Hunt is playing some really good footy at the moment, and I think he can free Amon up a lot and play his general style. And if Sean Sullivan plays like he did last week, it'll be the same for Luai. I think Penrith will win. We'll see how they back up last week's performance. I think that was a good one for them on the calendar a little bit, because obviously Manly was solid last year, but against a team that didn't make finals last year and weren't up there, it'll be interesting to see if they sort of, have that same intensity in defence. The interesting note here, I think, is still no Tarek Sims. So, I'm not sure sort of what's happening there. I know there has been the rumour mill that he might be going to a few different clubs. And I know, there was some stuff with Bellyache and Melbourne. And I think in terms of every other 15 teams in the competition, to think about someone like Tarek Sims under Bellyache, that would just be a scary thought. But it is quite clear to see that they don't want him around for whatever reason it might be, and he hasn't been named in the side again this week.
Yeah, that's definitely the most interesting point for me. I did read today though that there's about a 90% chance that he won't be heading to Melbourne this year. I think they've only got one spot left on the top 30 and about 100,000 on their cap, and I know players have been known to come to the Storm on a bit of a cheaper deal before, but 100,000 for a bloke that started for New South Wales last year, I think is quite unheard of. Both sides pretty well unchanged. Aaron Woods is ruled out, and George Burgess will make his debut, which I'm a bit excited for. But I think Penrith should make very, very easy work of the Dragons this week, regardless of how I feel about them doing in 2022.
Yeah, I think my matchup probably is between Jack DeBellin and Isaiah Yeo, like two absolute workhorse locks. Jack DeBellin was starting New South Wales lock before he ended up on his extended break. And Isaiah Yeo just does it all. So I think this round they have the Dragons are doing something for Norm Proven as well, who passed away in the off-season. So there's going to be a little thing for him, but I don't think emotion's going to get the Dragons through. I think it's going to be not necessarily another belting from Penrith, but I don't think it's going to be close.
Yep. So our next game is Sydney Roosters take on Manly Sea Eagles. So this is the one I'm most excited to sort of watch and see what happens. That's Friday at 8 o'clock, and you have just alerted me about some of our Queensland viewers that might be watching in. So I have been talking in New South Wales times, but you'll see that game at 7. At the FCG, which is, a good place for footy, and it's interesting that one of these two teams will start their season 0-2 and someone will bounce back. Split down the middle a little bit with this one. I have gone the Roosters. I think the Roosters might get the job done. The key matchup I'm excited to watch is in that middle there with Victor Radley and Jake Tavoyevich. I think they're two powerful locks, and they might just go, sort of hammer and tongue at each other. I think they're two different players as well. Jake gets through his work and without you sort of noticing, and Radley likes to change the momentum of the game a little bit as well. In terms of team list news, Dylan Walker comes back into Manly, which means that young fellow there, Cooler, drops out. And still no Naguama for the Roosters, which I thought they might have sort of played him in there, but they do have these big laps on Billy Smith, and it'll be interesting to see how they go. Just on this, boys, Billy Smith, obviously, and Radley both came off with the concussion stuff last week, and they have sort of changed it around a little bit in terms of the the independent doctor in the bunker, and now they can class Category 1 concussions, which basically means they can't return to field, which is a little bit interesting because here we are. Not even 7 days later, and both of these men are fit and ready to line up, and you sort of wonder what's going to happen. What would have happened in that game if Radley and Billy Smith were both there? Not to discredit Newcastle anyway, shape or form, but it might have changed the result a little bit. That's an interesting decision, and it'll be interesting to see how they can sort of wean that out of the game a little bit. But I have gone Roosters in this one.
It's actually funny you say that, because it didn't once cross my mind that either the Roosters or the Sea Eagles would be starting the season 0-2, and that on its own has shocked me a little bit. It's definitely not what I expected to see. But yeah, it's going to be Well, hopefully it's going to be an absolute show watching Tommy Turbo and James Tedesco go at it. Both were a bit quiet in their respective games last week, but their opponents done well to shut them down pretty well. I think that's definitely the thing I'm most looking forward to. Other than that, it's just all around going to be a great game. I mean, the two top four sides, in my opinion, and I think this will just fall short of the Thursday night game for game of the week, in my opinion.
You got a tip?
If I had to tip right now, I think I'd back Manly again. I think they're in for a big year, and last week was just tough coming up against the reigning premiers. So I'll ride solid with them boys this week again.
Yeah, my matchup is probably going to be the two centres, Billy Smith and Joey Manu up against Parker and Harper. Like, Brad Parker and Morgan Harper, probably two of the hardest, like, working and just bread and butter players. Like, there's nothing more that they can do. They're not overly world beaters up against Billy Smith, who could be anything, and Joey Manu, who definitely is a superstar of our game. I reckon I can't go past the Roosters, but that's just only through my bias. But yeah,
that 10-team bias of yours.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Sam Walker should go right too.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how long him and Keary take to sort of work it out and find their rhythm in that team. But it'll be a good test for him too. All right, our next game is Gold Coast Titans take on New Zealand Warriors up in Seabus there in the Gold Coast. We'll get that game at 3:00, but those Queensland folks, you'll get to see it at 2. So my matchup here is Toby Sexton from the Gold Coast. I thought last week he was showing signs of a quality 7 there, and he's actually going to be matched up against Ash Taylor, who interestingly enough, sort of was the reason why Ash sort of moved on a little bit there as well. I think they wanted to bring Toby through, and they obviously saw some stuff that they liked. Ash is a quality player as far as I'm concerned. I think the clubs that he's been at have had a fair bit of pressure on him in terms of trying to steer the team around, and to go to a place like the Warriors where he started on train and trial and then got upgraded. The pressure's been released, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes back into the side, obviously, because Shawnee's out injured there. I got the Titans to win this one. The team news is a little bit interesting. There's no Murdoch Masilla, so I don't know if that's injury or suspended related. And Tanner Boyd drops out of the side as well. I think on that Tanner Boyd dropping out of that 14-year-old Will Smith was he played amazing last week for the Gold Coast against his old side Para. So I've got the Titans to win.
Yeah, on Toby Sexton, I'm really looking forward to see him and AJ play together for the first time. I think, not together for the first time, but alongside each other in the halves for the first time. It was something I was looking forward to heading into last week, until Brimson was so cruelly ruled out. I think I'm definitely leaning with the Titans at this one, just based off the absence of Sean Johnson with that. What was that injury? Was it a pec tear or just a strain, or
just a strain? I think 4 weeks. I think.
Okay. But yeah, in terms of matchup, I can't look past the two young gun number ones, Jaden Campbell and Reece Walsh. Both lit up the competition in the time they had last year, and those two going head to head, I think it'll really be something to watch. And also Mo Fodawaker and Adam Fanua-Blake, they're two of my favourite props in the competition, and I can't wait to see those two big boppers run at each other all night.
Yeah, I've got Fafita, like Dave Fafita, just against anyone normally, but him and Ewan Aitken or Alicia Katoa, just the back row in general, that Fafita, Fermor and Big Tino up against Aitken, Katoa and Curran, that's just going to be such a interesting thing to watch. And yeah, Tino I think seems to be loving that captaincy, and I think he's really enjoying it. So I reckon I might just jump on the Titans. I think that home ground, I think they weren't too far off beating Para last week either, and yeah, that should be a good game.
All next game on that Super Saturday is Cronulla Sharks take on Parramatta Eagles down at Shark Park. My key matchup for this one is Matty Moylan and Dill Brown. So we spoke a bit about both of these players last week, and I think Brown was probably, played well, but again, stripped of opportunity there because he did get shifted to the centres. And Matty Moylan is playing for his starting jersey there, I believe anyway. So I do have Parra to win this one. Like I said, I do think the Sharks will sort of take a few weeks to gel and come together a little bit. And I think Parra can work on their defence through the week. But I am interested in this game because I think Cronulla might rattle the apple cart a little bit this year with a few sides, and this could just be the start of it. In terms of the outs and ins, they look pretty how you'd expect them to line up. Jake Arthur has been sort of dropped back to the reserves then. They've just gone with a bigger bench because I think Nathan Brown makes his return as well. And then there's still a couple of weeks until McGuinness comes back for Cronulla. Tracy's still out. There's still a few there on the bench for the Sharkies, but they've gone with their 4 big men on the bench again and no utility. So I'm not sure on that time frame for Trindle, but for now, Moylan gets that 6, and I think he gets another opportunity to sort of nail it down and make it his own.
This is definitely an interesting one for me. I'd really like to say that the Sharks might get it done, but I think Parramatta will be just too strong in the end. Thomas Opacek coming in at centre and pushing Wonga Blake to the wing. It's getting a bit dry at Parramatta for outside backs, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But I did just notice while scrolling through here now that Cam McGuinness is actually named in the reserves. I'm not sure how that injury is developing, but it's a bit of a shocker to see his name there. I can't wait to see him run out with the Sharks. In terms of matchups, probably going to have to say Nico versus Mitch Moses. 2 young halves. Obviously, Mitch has plenty more experience over Nico, but I don't know. I think the young fella from the Central Coast might really surprise Parra this week. And as I said, I'm still torn. I think Parra will get it done, but I'm not ready to rule out the Sharkies just yet. On that note, though, what are your thoughts on the Ronaldo centre, Ikuvalu on the wing combination?
I rate that. I think Ronaldo is actually quite a decent centre. Should be there for Queensland this year.
I think you might need to get the map out for one. No, I think in the centres he's good because you just want a player like that to touch the ball more often. So him in the centres does that. Maybe even eventually at some stage in his career he might look to a move at fullback. But while Will Kennedy's there, I can't see that happening. And I'm not sure. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he moves back to the wing and Tracy comes into that centre role, or if they're happy with it. And that was always the plan when Ikuvalu came across. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't mind it. I think he just needs time. I think Fitz is the sort of coach that if it goes pear-shaped, he's not just going to change it up a little bit. Just give him that time to work it out. And obviously, you're only defending one in, but still, you're making a lot different reads and stuff in that centre role. But I didn't see much of their game last week, but I don't think it was too bad. So
yeah, it was definitely the thing that confused me the most, because I thought Connor Tracy was great last year, and I thought he was a shoo-in to take the centre role, but I'm even more
think he might be injured.
To see him outside. Oh, really? Oh,
I think so. Yeah.
That would definitely make some sense, because I'm more surprised to not see him in the 14 jersey. I think he's one of the best versatile players Cronulla or a lot of clubs have, actually.
My matchup is probably you mentioned before, the 2 big fellas from Parramatta up against Toby Rudolph and Braden Hamlin-Ueli. Like Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Paulo, they could honestly be the starting front row for New South Wales, and I don't think anyone would complain. They've just got so much. Like Junior Paulo ball plays like a 5'8". He's like the fitter version of Dave Taylor in a lot of ways. And Regan Campbell-Gillard, yeah, Big Dave, great bloke to play with. But yeah, and Regan Campbell-Gillard can sort of he's got that late footwork that terrorises a lot of people. And I think Reid Marnie and Blake Brayley could be another one that two very impressive young hookers could do anything. And obviously I'm going to go Parramatta. So,
speaking of two young hookers, they're more match up for the next game here. We have North Queensland Cowboys versus Canberra Raiders up there in Townsville again there Saturday night. So I've gone with Reece Robson and Tommy Starling. Reece Robson is someone that you sort of, don't look at as a high quality superstar of the game, but it's not until you actually sit down and watch his work out of dummy half there you sort of appreciate him. And just quietly for anyone out there that doesn't mind a bet, Reece Robson anytime pays nice and well. Tommy Starling's another one that likes to get out of hooker there and do some work as well. So they're my matchup that I'm interested to see. Again, like you said, the Tamalolo project will be good to watch going forward again. Tom Gilbert was good from last week, good energy, and I think he's been named this week with Lukey off the bench there, and they have named Jason back at 13. So I don't know if there'll be a late change or if he will play lock, and it'll be interesting to see how many minutes he gets. Whitehead's going to play lock again, which I think was good last week, and obviously Brad Schneider there falls out due to COVID protocols, and Matt Frawley comes in, and they've moved James Schiller to the wing and Semi Valame into the centres for the Raiders there, which is a little bit of a different change. I thought they might have gone with even Kotrick in the centres, but I think maybe that experiment of the Dogs proved that it didn't really work too well. I've gone with Cows to win. I think I don't know, maybe a change up of the halves again for the Raiders, and I think Cows might bounce back after last week. They were very disappointing, but I think once they find their sort of attack and they get it right, they're a quality outfit and they can score points, and they've got that Griffin Neem coming off the bench for him as well, who in the trials I was impressed with too.
Yeah, this is a bit of a different game for me. I'm still disappointed to see no Scotty Drinkwater in the 17. I think a player like him was definitely what the Cowboys missed last week in a tight game against the Dogs. But I'm not Todd Payton. I don't know how he thinks. I don't think many people do, but each to their own, I suppose. Tabuai-Fidow, I thought it was really good last week, as well as Chance Nickel-Crockstadt. So they're definitely my matchup to watch this week. And just while I'm looking through the team list here, there's not a whole lot of matchups that are too tight. Other than that, other than the hooker role and whatnot, but I believe Canberra have a young debutant, like Adrian Trevelyan. Trevelyan. My apologies. Haven't heard much about this fella, but obviously in Hodgson's absence, he'll come in and might find himself a few minutes in the rotation with Tom Starling. But yeah, I think I just really don't see the Cowboys winning after what they produced Sunday night and how good Jack Whiten was playing last weekend. I think the Raiders should do him in pretty easy.
Yeah, I think the Raiders will do it in easy too, and I think the front row of the Raiders will make that happen. Josh Papali, Tom Starling, and Joseph Tarpany, that three is just going to be a handful for Cohen, Hess, Robson, and McLean. I just honestly can't see how it goes any other way, to be honest.
Joe Tarpany's in for a very big year, isn't he? He's really priming into one of the premier front rows.
He's good to watch. Good to watch. So our next game, we move into our Sunday games, and we've got Newcastle Knights take on West Tigers down there. Sunday afternoon footy back in Newcastle, and I don't think there's a better stadium in the world to watch rugby league than McDonald Jones. Might be a bit biased there, but it's a great ground. So I think obviously Tigers took Melbourne, to the end last week and played nice and well, and Knights had that good win against the Roosters. Newcastle will have been the team that can come out and play really good one week, and then the next week play horrible. So it'll be interesting to see if they can back that up. I've got my matchup here is again hookers, and I've gone with Chris Randall and Simpkin, who gets a shot this week, and Little drops out of the squad. So I think, Randall coming off a fairly good start there. Obviously, like you said, Brayley's out. They're two young hookers that have gotten an opportunity now, and now want to sort of stay in consistent first grade. So I think that'll be a good matchup to watch. There is a few good matchups in this as well. Obviously KP and his opposite number there, Dane Laurie, who's sort of shaping into an incredible footballer. I do think the Knights will win. I think they'll back up last week and they will win. The team lists are a little bit interesting. Luke Garner actually drops out into the reserves, which is interesting. He's sort of been in and around that team for a while now, and he's sort of dropped out. So I guess they want to stick with Kelmer, Tuolagi there in the back row, and then my other interesting point for the Knights side is they've named Leo Thompson in off the bench there, and I think I don't know much about Leo, but he's a prop, pretty young fella, and it's interesting that he's been named over some that I've had that I would have had higher than him, like Pasami Solo, even Matt Crocker there as well. So obviously, they've got wraps on him. They think he can do a job, but it'd be good to see him come off the bench.
Just on top of that, because I know you didn't catch the Knights Roosters game, Leo actually played off the bench last week as well, and he was okay. I mean, I didn't see much of him. I think he only played a handful of minutes there, but he
don't change a winning side.
No, yeah, that's it. I think Daniel Saifidi is progressing better than they expected. So there he is named in the reserve. So he might only be a week or two away. But yeah, both sides I think are pretty well unchanged, apart from the obviously Luke Garner dropping out of the squad, and the Tigers will welcome back James Tarmo. So I think the Knights will win. I was impressed with the Tigers this year, and I think they might surprise a lot of people, seeing as a big chunk of them had them fighting for the spoon this year, which still is very plausible. We have only seen round one, but yeah, my matchup for me is definitely Clifford and Hastings. I've been excited to see Hastings come back in the NRL since it was announced, and Jake Clifford, he's been good since coming to the Knights, and I think having two young halves like that going at each other will be very good to watch.
Yeah, mine's Frizzell and Fitzgibbon, and versus Tuolangi and Leilua. Like Kelma Tuolangi and Luciano Leilua seem to just have this thing, just both ball playing and explosive, whereas Frizzell and Fitzgibbon sort of just workhorses, and I think that's going to be an interesting little matchup. But I still can't go past Newcastle at home. I think they've just got too much going for him. Kalen Ponga's in for a big year too, considering all the talk and chat around him and what he's going to do for the rest of the year. And yeah.
Our last game of the round, save the best to last, as they say. We have the Canterbury Bulldogs up against the Brisbane Broncos. Dogs get a home game here. Obviously, Brizzy's got to travel down from up there, and my key matchup in this one is two blokes that would have played with each other last year, and that's Tavita Pengai Jr. and Kurt Capewell. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think they might play on the same edge as well. But I think obviously Capewell, not only the quality footy that we've seen him play does he bring to that Brisbane side, but also that leadership. And you saw that last week, and we haven't really seen Tavita much. Only a little bit through the trials, and obviously he didn't play last week. So I think if you add Tavita to their team, they can really have a good platform there with the Dogs forwards to build off. Obviously I've got to go Dogs to win, but I think it'll be a hard game, and Brizzy after their win last week will be sort of hard to match. When you look at the ins and outs, there isn't too many changes. Obviously Reynolds comes back in, and Kelly gets that 6 role. And then Billy Walters gets a spot on the bench there. So I've got to stick my hand up here. And I did say that Pereira is a better option over Corey Oates, and you boys, massive fan of Oatesy there. And I think he did play well last week, and he keeps his wing spot. In terms of the Dogs, I haven't really made too many changes by looking at it. Max King was really good off the bench last week, and I think he'll do a similar role again this week. So.
Yeah, it's I don't know about that saving the best for last comment, but yeah, we'll let you think what you want, mate. But there's actually a few matchups I'm pretty excited for. Obviously, Tessie New comes back into the side. He'll be going up against Matt Duffy, who I thought was okay last week, but we know what Matt Duffy's capable of when he gets going. I think that'll be a great battle. Payne Haas and Luke Thompson. You can include the other two front rowers if you want, but I think they're definitely the two to watch. Carrigan and Josh Jackson. Jackson had a big game last week, as did Pat Carrigan. I think they'll get right in amongst each other. But for me, the matchup to watch is a bit of excitement, and that's going to be the Fox, Josh Adokar, up against young Selwyn Cobbo. I can't wait to watch that one, to be honest. Two very talented footballers. We didn't get to see much of the Fox last year. Last week, sorry. He made that quick break, but spilled it at the hands of Tabula Fido. But I think if we can get some better weather this week, that should be a very entertaining clash on the edge there.
Yeah, I think the leadership that the Fox brings in that dog side, again, like we spoke about with Kurt Capewell, is good to see as well. There was that moment where obviously he got the captain's challenge and turned around to sort of spray the boys a little bit. It'll be a sort of a close matchup, I think. And there's a lot of combinations in both sides that they're still sort of working out. It's our first look at Reynolds in the 7 sort of jersey and to see how he gels with the rest of the team. But I think if Brizzy can play anything like they did last week, they'll pick up the 2 points here and they can move on 2 from 2, which would be a good start for them.
Yeah, as I did mention earlier in the podcast, that Reynolds and Katoni Staggs down the right edge, I'm buzzing to see what they can put on.
Yeah, my matchup's really the two locks. Two very different locks. You got one who's sort of a ball player and hard work, and then you got Josh Jackson, who probably just works so much harder than you probably ever gets credit for. And if it was at any other club, he would have won a premiership. And yeah, I think that's just a very good game for the both of them. But I think the Broncos would just take it. I think how good they were last week without Tessie New and Adam Reynolds, I think they go to the next level this week. Don't expect premiership, but they just got it there, I think.
All right, that wraps up our debut episode, boys. So obviously, for everyone listening, it's a bit of a long one, this week, and we're sort of finding our groove a little bit. And we covered our review and our preview, but hopefully you get an opportunity this weekend to catch some footy and have a look at some of these teams and how good is it just to have rugby league back on our screens and something to do for 4 days a week and get right into our footy that we love and we watch every week. So
it definitely does make the week go quicker having to come home on a Thursday and have footy on the telly. It's just that good. Great to be back. Great. All right.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back again next week.